If any one of us got up at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning to catch a gorgeous sunrise, I think there's something that all of us should realize. There's nothing remarkable about that sunrise. They've happened every single day of your life. The trick is to put yourself in the right time and the right place to experience it. So when I was 12 years old, my entire middle school lunchroom was silenced by the vice principal, so that a guy from Parks and Recreation could come in and guilt us into volunteering for a special needs camp for the entire summer. It pained me to watch this guy try to do his sales pitch and connect with a bunch of youngsters that they wanted him to pass the ketchup and just go away. At the conclusion of his speech, he sat down at a folding table with his sign-up sheet and waited for everyone to come up and sign up, and no one did. And the minutes passed, and you could see his rosy outlook just diminished. So when I put my name on that sign-in sheet, it literally changed the course of my life. How do I know this to be true? Well, I've worked at summer camps every single year since then. That's 30 years. That's a long time. My kids are saying that too. But in those first 9 summers, I got to work with special needs kids, and they are the purest people on the planet. And had I missed that opportunity, I'm not really sure who I'd be or where I'd be today. So each summer session, each day camp session was 8 weeks long, and every Monday brought 30 brand new campers. Some of them had cerebral palsy, some were autistic, some were blind, many of which suffered from things that I couldn't even pronounce. Incredibly, the budget for this camp only allowed for 6 or 7 paid staff, wildly outnumbered. So the backbone of this entire experience for these campers was teenage volunteers, 1 for every single camper. And that's how I spent my first 3 summers as a volunteer. And so every Monday, paired up with a new camper, and it was terrifying because we had no idea what we were doing. But it was exhilarating because we also had no idea what we were doing. So 12 years old, matched up with a 17-year-old boy in a wheelchair. He was essentially skin and bones, and he was silent. His muscles were taut and spastic, although he did manage a little bit of a smile through a clenched jaw. 12 years old. I was embarrassed. I was awkward. I didn't know what to say to him. I didn't know what he understood of this world. But halfway through the first day, he had to go to the bathroom, and it was my job to do whatever was necessary. And so I nearly dropped him as I transferred him from his wheelchair to the toilet. When he was done, the only thing that I could think to do was to kind of get him over my shoulder so that I could reach his bottom to wipe it. As I pivoted him back over towards his wheelchair, I could feel his knotted hands pressing on my back. He was helping me help him. So as I lowered him down to his wheelchair, his mouth passed my ear, and the first words that I heard from him were nothing more than a high-pitched whisper. And he said, "Thank you." So my eyes welled up, and the tears ran in with all the sweat that was already pouring down my face. That was it. I was hooked. So it's actually taken me a couple of decades to come to grips with the gravity of those experiences. We were nothing more than children with tremendous responsibility that we weren't prepared for and we weren't trained for. So the camp itself was a risk management nightmare. It was an abandoned AmVets lodge in Massachusetts, and it was pinched between a highway, some railroad tracks, and a stagnant lake. We rarely had a camp nurse, and we had no money for supplies. But what we did have was a love for every single one of those campers. But we also had a love for one another. We had insane enthusiasm, and we had boundless creativity. And these kids had fun and were engaged not because we were doing cool stuff. They were engaged because we as volunteers decided we were going to have a blast and that we were going to make them a part of that fun, and they did. It was not uncommon from one summer to the next to hear that one of our campers had passed. So no one is on this earth for a very long time, and some people are on this earth shorter than others. So we decided we were going to take these days and fill them with the good stuff. So at the end of the summer, our 30 highest functioning campers and 30 of our highest functioning volunteers slammed into a school bus with half a dozen staff. We drove from Massachusetts to Vermont for a week-long overnight. One of the sweetest campers we had Down syndrome, was in his late 30s. He could manage a couple of sounds, but he loved to hold hands. And so we decided as a staff, we're going to work with him on his sounds. Now, I don't know if you have ever given this any thought, but when that school bus rolls back into the parking lot after a week-long overnight, the parents of our campers are already a wreck. They're not accustomed to their children being out of their care. They're not accustomed, well, the campers aren't accustomed to not being around their parents. In my experience, special needs children require a lot more of their parents. These kids are different. It's not uncommon, I think, for there to be heartache and some silent struggle. Sometimes there's not a graduation, there's not a moving out, there's not a getting married. But special needs kids bring tremendous joy to families. And what every single parent and child, I think, should envy is the relationship and the bond between special needs children and their parents. So, bus rolls in, doors slide open, everyone pours out of the bus and into hugs, and the last camper off the bus, the one with Down syndrome, walks over to his parents with a blank expression on his face. As he gets to his mom and dad, a staff person leans in and whispers something in the camper's ear. Everyone who got off the bus is gathered around. So the camper responds by saying, "Mama." Now, it's not, if you're a parent, I think you can speak to the joy that comes from hearing your child's first words. It's not uncommon or difficult to imagine that your child's first words would be "mama." But imagine if you waited 40 years to hear that first word. Imagine if you're a parent and you had long ago come to terms with the realization that your child would never speak, but then spoke. So we were nothing but kids. We really didn't know what we were doing, but there was something profound going on here. And so for every single experience that we had that strummed our heartstrings, we had 100 experiences that had us rolling in laughter and joy. And so that was the place, those were the people, that was the time, and those were the experiences that formed me into who I am today. Now, it's a little bit emotional for me to talk about, of course, but there are some people that take the experiences from their childhood and use them as excuses in the present day. And I'm just lucky because my childhood gave me nothing but reasons. Reasons why, by comparison, I have never really had a problem. Why I value my health. Why I know that enthusiasm wins. And why it's my responsibility to choose to be happy. And so it's not anyone else's job, and it's not a right, it's a choice. And I carry these things around me like oxygen, and they feed my heart, and they feed my mind, and they feed my lungs. So at the end of my freshman year in high school, I got a job as a draftsman. I love to draw, and I worked for an engineering company. And it was just, to watch one of my drawings result in something that was machined and drilled and heat-treated and assembled and polished. It was just cool. I loved the cause and effect of all that. Now that inspired me to go to the University of Massachusetts and pursue a job or a degree, a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Somewhere in the vicinity of my junior year, I flunked out. I had to beg my way back in the program. And one of the consequences of that begging is I had to meet with the dean of engineering every 2 weeks for the remaining 2 years of school to show him my test scores and show him my homework. And in my first meeting with him, he was not shy in sharing with me his confidence that I would continue to fail. So I spent the last 2 years of college academically hazed by professors who really did not want me to be an engineer, and they had every right. But I also spent my summers working at camp, feeding my soul. But I just, at that time, and even today, I guess, I just figured camp would be eventually something that I would grow out of. So I got my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, but I'm not a mechanical engineer by trade. But the work that I do these days still results in things that are drilled and machined and heat-treated and assembled and polished. So instead of working with machines and metal, I get to work with staff. I get to work with kids. Instead of sitting down doing a bunch of drawings, I'm working with activity plans and staff training. And armed with an army of inspirational staff, I still get to experience limitless causes and effects. Now, one thing I think is important that you realize about me, and maybe it's not the easiest thing to digest, is I do not do what I do to make other people happy. That's not the number one reason. But I don't sacrifice. I do what I do because this stuff makes me happy. And you'd be hard-pressed. There's no amount of money that would entice me to spend so much of my life on something that I didn't believe in. So each summer, 1,100 campers pass through Passages Adventure Camp. Can I get some love for Passages? Yeah. And this is the 16th year that I'll be the director at Passages. I love what I do with every fiber of my being. But I have to count myself really fortunate because I didn't go on a quest or a search to find out what I love to do. It found me. I have 175 unreal staff. 175. They also happen to be whitewater kayakers, rock climbers, mountain bikers, stand-up paddleboarders, primitive wilderness survival specialists. And from one summer to the next, 90% of our staff return. I want this to be the best job that these staff ever have in every respect, or at least until they have to grow up and get a real job, and then they can do the same or better for their staff. I do have to admit that I have not taught my staff a great deal. I think the part of my job that I've consistently done well is I've paid very, very close attention to the inspirational lessons and phrases and experiences that our staff have provided. I pay attention to those things and I gather those things up, those kernels, and then I share them with our present staff. So I have a handful of one-sentence kernels that I'd like to share with you. You ready? All right. If you know me, you know what the first one is. Whining never works. The first time that a person feels a part of a group, the first time a new person feels a part of the group, is the first time that an entire group shares a laugh. We are all changed people after tears. Tears of joy, tears of sorrow, tears of pride, tears of fear. If you can manage to fake a smile, it will definitely help you if you're scared. We can't make anything fun for someone else. You can't manufacture that for someone else. The best you can do is have a blast and invite everyone you can find to join in. Kids are braver than your parents. How do I know this to be true? Parents, would you be willing to do the stick dance in front of 70 people in exchange for a couple of chocolate chip cookies at your next business luncheon? No, you would not. But kids won't bat an eyelash at that. We can bathe ourselves no better than the swiftly moving current of the mighty James River. Bumps, scrapes, and cuts, they're tattoos. They're tattoos of fun, and they're tattoos of effort. Everything in life is more fun if you are covered in glitter and yelling. Woo! Now, we don't always have glitter with us, but we always, always, always have our enthusiasm in tow. We were all born with immune systems, and we need to keep those immune systems healthy, and we need to feed them. And what we need to feed them is nature. It's not hard to make friends. The hard part is remembering why it's important to continue to make friends throughout your life. We all have to admit, or I certainly could admit, that life these days is pretty easy. And I think if you sprinkle in just a little bit of planned adversity, that life gets a lot more spicy. The palms of my hands, and maybe the palms of your hands, will sweat every time you hear the words, "Dodgeball!" We are all competitive people by nature. And when we learn to lose graciously, it will help us learn to win graciously. The greatest and most expensive gift that you can give a child is your time. Nothing in the world works quite as well as good old eye contact. And kids rule, if you didn't already know this, but kids rule because you can look them square in the eye, you can put a hand on their shoulder, give a little squeeze, and say, "Follow me. I'll take care of you." And you know what? They'll follow us up climbs. They'll follow us off of jumps, through rapids, and down cliffs. That's why kids rule. Now, one of my earliest and closest friends spent 9 summers with me at Camp Arrowhead in Massachusetts at the special needs camp. And his name is Ed McLaughlin. And the name of his camp is Virginia Commonwealth University. He's the new athletic director at VCU. And so he and I very happily are raising our families here in Richmond. And all of his kids have recently attended Passages. And between my 2 boys, who were seated here tonight, and his kids, they are directly benefiting from those formative experiences that Ed and I shared as 12-year-old volunteers at a special needs camp in Massachusetts. So this part of my life has come full circle, and it's blowing me away. And I wish the same for you. I know some teachers that are skeptical for the future of the world based upon their experience with kids day to day in the classroom. And I could not disagree more, because my experiences with kids and with staff leave me incredibly hopeful. How hopeful? Well, if you think about it, my entire career and livelihood is squarely in the hands of 14 to 20-year-olds. That's how confident I am. Of all the renewable and non-renewable resources that are of this planet, there's nothing more valuable than kids. And you'd be hard-pressed to convince me that there wasn't more important work in this world than working with kids. So, if you're anything like me, you've missed your fair share of sunrises. I've missed plenty of sunrises. And so the thought that I would like to leave with you is, what are you prepared to do to experience as many sunrises as you possibly can? And I'm not talking about the ones that happen at 5 a.m. If you think about it, there are experiences all around us that are taking place, but have we put ourselves in the right time and the right place to experience it? So it could be as simple as just starting a conversation with a stranger, or as complex as learning Mandarin. Now, when I was 8 and I was trying to find my friends in the woods, I would make a call and then wait for that call to echo back. So it was kind of homegrown radar. So to this day, I still use that call when it's time to rally the troops. So if, just so I know who's in the audience tonight, when I make that call and count to 3, if you've heard me make that call before, I would like for you to echo it back. Sweet. Thank you.